E mihi ana ki te rangi, e mihi ana ki te whenua, e mihi ana ki ngā maunga, e mihi ana ki ngā awa, e mihi ana ki te kaupapa nāna tātou I karanga, ki ngā mana, ki ngā reo, rau rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Can I particularly acknowledge mana whenua, Taranaki whānui ki te upoko o te ika a Māui, and particularly June and Peter Jackson of Te Atiawa for their welcome this morning. And can I also acknowledge you, Hone, Mark, all of the members of Forest and Bird branches, councillors, and pay tribute to Roger Grace. I can remember Roger, I think it might have been after the photograph that was on the screen at a Forest and Bird gathering at Shakespeare Park, and then going out into one of the estuaries with him and him showing me the depressions in the sand where Stingray had been, and just his enthusiasm and his passion for nature and encouraging others to learn more and to have that same aroha that he has for nature. He is a giant that has passed. Can I also give my best wishes to Kevin Haig, the pneumonia he's suffering. You must be working him too hard. Last year, I, as a newest Minister of Conservation, set out some of my priorities. This year, I would just like to go through some of the changes we have been making in government and also acknowledge Labour MP Angie Warren-Clark in the audience, because it is a government of three parties, and to allow enough time for questions so that you, as Mark noted, can hold me to account as a representative of the government. So it's a bit of a report card about what we've been doing over the last 18 or so months. So of course in Budget 2018 we had the biggest increase in conservation funding in 16 years, another 181 million over 4 years for the department. That funding has enabled a ramp up of conservation work across the motu, particularly with the Department of Conservation. The department is critical because it provides a lot of the technical expertise. It's responsible for managing a third of New Zealand's land area and also a lot of marine protected areas, well not enough of them, and marine mammal sanctuaries. So there's been an additional 100 staff appointed just in the last 12 months alone as part of that investment back into Te Papa Arowhai so that it can do its job and it has the capacity on the ground to work with communities, with mana whenua for conservation. And there've been, so this is the scale of the ramp up in funding that is occurring. The dotted line is what the pre-existing budget would have continued to be. So that's enabled a big scale up in the predator control program, Te Akina Ngā Manu, that Dr. Graham Elliott will be talking to you about later. It's also enabled significant biodiversity investment, which means more staff at place, more technical advisors, more people working in the RMA advocacy field. It's happened more slowly than I would have liked, but there is a real ramp up that's happening, and there's also been an increased investment, rather smaller, in visitor facilities and assets, and that's partly as a result of the 2017 budget money coming through. Then in Budget 2019 we were able to do this again, and that is because of the International Visitor Conservation and Tourism Levy. Each international visitor, other than Australians because they have residency as soon as they arrive, will be paying $35. That will lead to a $42 million increase in DOC's budget each year. So this sustained increase in the department's funding is absolutely critical to enabling it to rebuild after the major cuts, the loss of over 200 staff over the last decade. So the department is preparing an investment case for how this additional funding in Budget 2019 will be spent. Priorities for that are, of course, biodiversity, including some landscape scale predator control initiatives, responding to visitor pressures. We need to ensure that visitors have a quality experience, but that also the numbers of visitors aren't degrading the places that they come to see and enjoy. So the levy is a chance for them to make a contribution to helping to protect the fantastic landscapes that we know that over 52% of visitors say is a reason for them coming to Aotearoa, New Zealand. And the levy's important too because this government has realised that our tourism growth was happening without adequate planning. So there is now a new tourism strategy which I and Tourism Minister Kelvin Davis launched in Rotorua in May, and there is a much greater commitment to sustainability in that strategy and a much greater recognition by industry that nature is at the heart of their success, and if they want to provide an experience that people come back for, they need to be investing in biodiversity protection. So the department now is working to ensure that it's easier for local businesses, some of the concessionaires, to assist with funding predator control, and some of the bigger operators like Real Journeys are putting quite a substantial investment into predator control in Fiordland, on Coal Island and other places. So there is an opportunity for tourism as our biggest export earner to show how they can better recognise that nature is the basis of their economic success. Some of that funding will also be used for greater work on compliance. A lot of concession operators want to see that everyone has got a concession from the department, so that means more rangers being out at some of those very popular areas, ensuring that all the operators there have got their concession. It also means more work in compliance around marine reserves. For the first time, quite a significant increase in the monitoring and compliance work. And the new legislation that we got passed last year, the Conservation Infringement Bill, does mean that it's much easier now for the department to hand out infringement notices rather than taking prosecutions. And that, particularly in areas like whitebaiting, marine reserves, will assist in compliance. So this is just an overview of the department's funding, comparing 2018-19 and future years with what has happened in the past. And the big blue is the international visitor levy funding. The orange is the extra 76 million over 4 years that came in budget 2018. And the reddish colour is the extra investment in predator control. So you can see in both budget 2018 and 2019, it has enabled significantly more funds to go into landscape scale predator control, into biodiversity contingency work, rebuilding the capacity of the department, and also into some smaller amounts into tourism and visitor infrastructure. So what does this biodiversity delivery with this additional funding actually mean? I could go through the three domains, but I've just chosen to focus briefly on freshwater. So that extra money from budget 2018 is meaning that there is more monitoring in terms of rivers and streams, their health and condition. It's only a small increase, but 19 of 200 priority catchments are now being actively managed by the department, and that means often that there are coordinators appointed to work with landholders, to work with groups like Forest and Bird, to identify what are the issues that really need to be tackled here. Is it riparian planting? Is it work on pest fish? Is it work with improving and protecting spawning habitat for inanga? So quite a few coordinators have been appointed or in the process of being appointed. And Te Papa Arawhai is working closely with Ministry for the Environment. In this budget, there was an extra 220 million from MFE and MPI to put into sustainable land and water use. The department's identified priority catchments ecologically, and those are rivers like the Waitangi, the Pelorus, the Hotio in the Wellsford area, and the Awapoko, which you can see in Northland, up there. So with these priority rivers, there will be additional resource coming through Ministry for the Environment and MPI to work with landholders in terms of improving the sustainability of land management in the catchment. And one of the things I was really pleased with is now a coordinator for the work that's being done around koi carp, particularly in the Waikato, much more coordination across agencies to make the funds that are available go further and to try and avoid further spread of that really invasive species. But as Mark alluded to, we've got a long way to go. As I said last year, and you all know, we have a biodiversity crisis. So this year we've done a report to the International Convention on Biological Diversity that shows that we are making some progress. 11 out of 16 regional councils now have biodiversity strategies. The amount of private land that landowners are protecting through covenants has increased by 69% between 2013 and 2018. Another 70,000 hectares are covenanted. We're seeing a much increased awareness of the biodiversity challenges, and yesterday was in Nelson at a dawn ceremony to celebrate Matariki and the launching of Kotahitanga Mo Te Taiao, which is an alliance that Forest and Bird, through Debs and Martin and others, has been really involved in. But it's 12 statutory organisations, about 6 statutory organisations: Bulla, Kaikoura, Marlborough, Tasman District Councils, Nelson City Council, Department of Conservation, Mana Whenua from Te Tau Ihu, all committing to working together for conservation and with a very detailed strategy of what the challenges are, what success looks like, and where the key priorities for action are. So I couldn't imagine 10 years ago that you would have councils like Bulla recognising the significance of real investment in conservation and working through this alliance now at the top of the South to really influence their business plans and their statutory plans. So there have been some big achievements there, but we have got a lot more to do. And I think anyone who has read the Environment Aotearoa report that was released earlier this year, the major changes in land use, increasing urban land use, urban areas expanding by 10% between 1996 and 2012, the intensification that means, the pressure that puts on waterways, on the coast, invasive species, of course, major threat, and freshwater restoration. Mark mentioned too the challenges that we have there with the major intensification of agriculture over the past 2 decades. And of course the report to the Convention on Biological Diversity was also in the context of the United Nations recent report by their equivalent to the IPC in the climate space, which highlighted that there are 1 million species globally that are threatened or at risk of extinction. 4,000 of those species, of course, are here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So, what else are we doing? The review of the New Zealand Biodiversity Strategy the strategy was finalised in 2000, so now it's up for its review. That is well underway. Some of you may have been to some of the regional forums about that. It is going to be considered by Cabinet this week and should be released for public comment in July. So this strategy is really important. The current one from 2000 meant that there was a major recognition by regional councils in particular that they had a responsibility. And this new strategy, which will be a conversation happening through July, August, and then the final strategy developed after that, is about focusing on restoration, both of nature itself and people's connection with nature. As a very urbanised country, the opportunities for people to experience nature in our cities and towns, we need to strengthen those opportunities, because it's only by engagement with nature that people have an aroha respect for it and then get involved in protecting it. So there are ideas in the strategy for how that can be better done, and really welcome the contribution that Forest and Bird branches and members will make to the refining and finalising of that strategy, so that throughout our economy and society, we really recognise that nature is at the heart of our wellbeing, and we make the changes in our economic strategies to put that into practice. So the discussion document will be being released, as I said, in July, and there are some quite big system shifts that are being proposed in that in order to achieve that vision of restoration of nature and our connection with nature. There's been a lot of engagement around 25 hui with mana whenua, so the Mataranga Māori, Te Ao Māori perspective is really strongly a part of the strategy. In terms of the Resource Management Act, and acknowledge Basil and Anne Graham, who led really Forest and Birds work in terms of RMA advocacy. The department, I signalled to them that their responsibility under Section 6C of the their responsibility under the Conservation Act to do advocacy for nature has meant that the department now has an RMA strategy to guide its work. The additional funding has meant more technical specialists, some additional planners, and I think a couple of extra lawyers as well. The department took its first judicial review last year. That involved the Kaimama wetland in Northland. It was a resin peat wax proposed operation that then was withdrawn without it needing to go to court, so that was really successful. RMA advocacy in Whangamarino, that great wetland in the Waikato, by the department has meant that there has been quite a significant reduction in the allowable sediment from the flood protection, flood management scheme there. So the department is now more engaged in presenting to district councils, regional councils, the values of landscapes, of our threatened species, and prioritising the work around that. The National Policy Statement on Indigenous Biodiversity, the work on that is being led by Minister Mahuta. It's expected that there will be a consultation on that later this year. The thinking is that the public discussion around the biodiversity strategy helps provide a good basis for then public comment on the draft National Policy Statement. I'm aware that there is some concern amongst the trustees of the collaborative group, which Forest and Bird was involved in, and will be looking to see how we can ensure that the vision of the collaborative group is actually really strongly reflected in the final document. I'm sure officials are very mindful of that, but things like this always require just a check along the way to ensure that they are staying true to the vision of the collaborative group. So the core part of the National Policy Statement on Biodiversity is about maintaining those relationships with iwi, working and engaging with iwi to maintain and restore biodiversity, to provide flexibility for cultural activities, and to ensure that we are really looking at what are the impacts on biodiversity outside significant natural areas, and ensure that those areas and their values are really mapped and well understood, and that there is a real commitment to restoration and a restoration ethos. So that you can expect that probably later this year around September, October. One of the issues that Forest and Bird was hugely involved in its role as an advocate and honour that was the campaign to protect the Mokehinui River. When Meridian in 2000 had that proposal for an 85-metre high dam that would have flooded about 330 odd hectares of the Mokehinui River, drowned areas that were habitat for pau elephanta, for really affected whio blue duck. So this year, the government made the largest ever addition to a national park in our history, with putting 64,000 hectares of the Mokehinui catchment into Kahurangi National Park. So that takes Kahurangi to just over 500,000 hectares, and really pay tribute to the campaigning that Forest and Bird did alongside Whitewater New Zealand, Federated Mountain Clubs and others to ensure that the public realised the significance of that catchment. That's another example of your giving voice to nature, ensuring the public are aware, and then government acting in response to those campaigns. So well done, Forest and Bird. So that was an example of how, in terms of the campaign, highlighting the values of the Mokanui catchment, that it was worth national park status, that there needs to be further work to reclassify stewardship land, which accounts for about 1/3 of conservation land, to give it an appropriate classification, whether it's national park, scenic reserve, conservation park. That is a big exercise. The need for it was highlighted by the former Parliamentary Commissioner, Dr. Jan Wright, and the department is starting a pilot project on the West Coast soon. And I'm just looking at the time, so I better get a move on. Predator control, again, the biggest ever landscape scale predator control operation being rolled out this year, over a million hectares, largely in the South Island, and ensuring that we are preventing, with the mega mast, and Graham will talk more about this, species like mohua, kakariki, all declining. When 1080 hasn't been used in the past, like Mount Stokes, when there's been a mast year, we saw the consequences of that with mohua dying out there. We want to stop that here, and I'm really pleased that a big operation in the Cobb Valley went ahead successfully last week, and the work now is being rolled out over Kahurangi in coming days. It's a major operation, huge amount of planning and investment by the department, but so far been going really well. Tar, that was quite controversial late last year. There was the tragedy with the Wanaka helicopter crash, but the department is committed to ensuring that there are 10,000 tar that are controlled this year. The work will be done largely in July and August when there's snow and conditions are really good for controlling tar, and that is to protect our fragile soils and alpine habitats, and also particularly the threatened species like ranunculus, which are really vulnerable to tar browsing. Population of over 35,000 animals just on conservation land alone. We need to bring that down, 10,000 animals being controlled this year. Kauri dieback, major investment in the budget in science research, and the department's involved in advocacy in the Thames Coromandel district and elsewhere for effective controls on earthworks, so that earthworks, an area where kauri are present, don't become a vector for spread. In the freshwater space, the Conservation Indigenous Freshwater Fish Bill, Angie Warren-Clark's very aware of that, has just been reported back from Select Committee. That will provide much better tools for managing the protection of spawning habitat. There's work being done to implement the Fish Passage Guidelines, better assessment of what makes good spawning habitat. NIWA is really involved in developing a big database there, and there'll be further consultation on improving the regulations around whitebait management later this year. There'll be a discussion document coming out. In the marine space, Minister Nash and myself decided earlier this year to proceed with Network 1 and acknowledge the work of Sue Maturin on the collaborative group. Network 1 was favoured by the majority of the collaborative group. It's for the much bigger network of over 1,200 square kilometres, a series of 5 marine reserves and 6 other marine protected areas using Fisheries Act tools. So agencies are working on that and going through the statutory process. So there'll be an opportunity to have a say on that. This is where I'm frustrated it's not going fast enough, but we are trying to speed that up. Hector's Dolphin Threat Management Plan was released just recently. Would like to correct some comment in the media. It was very clear in the plan that fisheries bycatch from set nets and trawl nets is a major threat to Hector's dolphin. We also need to do work on toxoplasmosis, which comes from cat faeces. So DOC's going to be doing an action plan on that, but the document very clearly recognises that it is fisheries bycatch which we have to deal with, and that's why the red area is the proposed expansion under one of the options for the closure to set nets and trawl nets to better protect Maui dolphin and the extension of the West Coast North Island Marine Mammal Sanctuary. So that's a doubling of the area that's closed. With seabirds, National Plan of Action on seabirds, I'm going back this afternoon to provide some detailed comment on that. Forest and Birds campaign for zero bycatch is a really good one, and we need to make sure that that is the objective in the plan. There are more liaison officers, again, through the additional funding, to work with industry, to work with MPI, to actually put in place much more effective technology like hook shielding devices to bring the bycatch down, and more efforts at international cooperation, because birds like the Antipodean albatross range as far as the waters off the Chilean coast to feed, so it needs international efforts. It can't just be done in New Zealand. And one more slide. Action, or two more actually. Action on plastics pollution. We've got the ban on plastic, single-use plastic bags on Monday. Much more processing on shore, and the strengthening of the Basel Convention, which New Zealand signed up to, which means controls on waste exports. Skip that. Final slide. Just where we will achieve real protection now is working in partnership. Te Manahuna Aoraki is an ambitious 310,000 hectare project in the Mackenzie Basin involving Ngāi Tahu Hapu, landowners, Te Papa Atawhai, philanthropic organisations like Next, with an ambition to get rid of predators east of the state highway up to the Maunga, across the catchments of the lakes. One of the landowners there said to me recently, it's the best thing that has happened in the Mackenzie in the last decade. Where we get people working together, we can turn around our biodiversity crisis, but it requires us all working together, and that's where Forest and Bird has such a critical role in highlighting the severity of the crisis, and as a community organisation working with councils, government, iwi, so that we bring everybody together for the same vision of restoring nature. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Sorry.
Thank you.
Get them to sit down. We'll ask them to tell them.
Ngā mihi kia koe mō tō mahi. I'm sure that we're all glad that even though that ran slightly over time, we would much prefer that our Minister is listing more projects than fewer. So with that in mind, we'll have a little bit of time for a couple of questions. We've got some mics that are floating around on the sides of the room. So if you do have a question, up the back corner there, and then maybe we'll have up the back corner over this side. Yep.
Kia ora, I'm Augusta McCasey Pickard from the Mercury Bay branch on the Coromandel. Minister, you spoke a lot about tourism. The Coromandel obviously is well known for its tourism. A lot of our iconic landscapes appear on a lot of the national tourism brochures. You talked a lot about biodiversity. You talked a lot about threatened species. Gold mining is a real issue for us on the Coromandel. We have currently got the first gold mining application over dockland. It's the first gold mining application on the Coromandel since the 1980s. It's over dockland that is home to the Archie's frog, which is the world's most threatened frog. The speech from the throne promised no new mines on conservation land, and now we have this. Can you tell us where you are going with that policy? Is it ever going to happen? Are we ever going to see traction? Is it going to happen before the Coromandel gets dug up? Thank you.
Kia ora. Can I just acknowledge National Conservation Spokesman Sarah Dowie? I didn't see you come in, Sarah. So no new mines. There is a consultation document that is underway. There is discussion across the three parties in government that will be released for public submissions in the next couple of months. I'm very aware of the issues in Coromandel, and I would expect the department, in terms of providing its decision on the application for access, to obviously take into account the values of the land, the significance of the Archie frog's habitat. But yes, there is a consultation document that is coming out. But these things take time. Really good question, and yes, that hasn't been an area that the last budget has increased the resourcing in, but DOC has a program, Healthy Nature, Healthy People, and that is a lot to do with outreach in the community, and I would love to see more funding go into that. So it's on the radar, but it didn't get funded in budget 2018 or 2019 because of the key priorities to actually do work on the ground like the landscape scale predator control.
Right, I see we've got 2 more people with the mic. We are running tight on time, so we'll just have those 2 questions and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Liz Slowton. The MPI proposals for hectares in Maui dolphin basically amount to a maximum sustainable harvest of hectares in Maui dolphins. What sort of discussions have you and the Department of Conservation had with MPI over this, and what do you think, either you personally or the department, whichever you feel comfortable speaking about, on these proposals?
So, in terms of the threat management plan, it is a joint one between Fisheries New Zealand and Department of Conservation. It is out for public submissions now. I'm expecting strong submissions from Forest and Bird. Off the west coast of the South Island, I'm aware that people think there hasn't been enough done there in terms of the exclosures to fishing. But in terms of the plan, it was based on internationally peer-reviewed science. NGOs were engaged in that process, and my understanding also is that the plan, there was a 6-month delay so that that international peer review could happen. So that is the advice that ministers have been given, that it is the best available science. So now is the opportunity for any further changes for that to come through the public submission process, and we'll be very interested in the submissions. Last question.
I'm Nikki Auld. I think you're doing a great job. I've got a question on housekeeping. I was just wondering how the government can control all the councils to make them actually buy into increasing their own biodiversity in their parks. Like at the moment in Auckland, they just spray everything, so there's no regeneration. And I think it's about time that the councils develop their own parks departments and actually gardened their reserves so that they allow for biodiversity to actually pop up instead of just killing everything because it's cheaper.
I think that's probably best resolved through communities making submissions through the council plan process as to how the Parks Department operate. Auckland, to its credit, under Mayor Goff, has made a major investment in improving water quality through the stormwater system, upgrading that infrastructure. So there is a real commitment to that, to reducing waste. So I think at that level of their policies for application of weed control, probably best done by working with the actual Parks Department. But kia ora, and thank you all for all of your work, your powerful advocacy, and for being a really courageous voice for nature. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.